Hello, thank you for watching Taxpayer Alert. I'm Al Segalla. I'll be your moderator. I'm also president of the Calaveras County Taxpayer Association, and we have these programs to try to bring information to the taxpayer and the public about the important things that are going on. And so we try to get people that really know something and know what they're talking about, and people who watch this program are very well informed because this is what we try to do. Our guest this evening is Ben Stopper, who's our supervisor-elect. And Ben, welcome.
Thank you, Al.
Okay, how do you get involved in the supervisor business? Why do you want to be a supervisor?
You know, it's really caring about the community and being involved for many years within the community and, you know, wanting to point us in a general prosperous direction in the future.
Well, we certainly agree with that. What are some of the main concerns that you have? We can talk in detail on them a little bit.
Well, you know, kind of economic prosperity in the county, you know, the proper growth. Also, we have a lot of younger generations here that we would like to be able to easily get jobs out of high school, so on and so forth. We want to help our kids through education. I mean, there's a diverse amount of things that I'm very interested in improving in the county so that we can be successful.
What are some of the things that we've been doing, we being the Board of Supervisors, that maybe we can improve on?
Well, I think personally, I feel that we need to prioritize some more of the things that we need to work on. Things like the general plan. The general plan's a basic map of the county on, you know, land uses, zoning, so on and so forth, and it provides a avenue for people to open up businesses in the proper areas. That's one of my main concerns.
It seems like prosperity follows freedom, not vice versa. So if the general plan was freedom friendly, we'd more likely have prosperity because people would come here and be able to build things and do things. Does that make sense?
I agree.
Cool.
Land use rights is a huge thing with me, and you know, but also with land use rights comes the responsibility to your neighbors.
Right. You, the enjoyment of our property rights stops at our neighbors because we cannot violate their rights.
Right. We wouldn't want to impede on their lifestyle.
Yeah. So in the general plan, we're getting to a point now where I think it's gone through the environmental review process, and
Yes,
it's going to come back to the Board of Supervisors. I'm not sure if it's going to come back to Board of Supervisors or go to the Planning Commission first.
I believe it will go to the Planning Commission first because they went through the 60-day public comment after the EIR was produced, and they have to address all those questions and concerns that were put in by the residents of Calaveras County when they commented on the environmental impact report.
Do you have an idea of time frame, how long it would be before it would get to the Planning Commission?
You know, we would have to probably sit down with the planning director and see how far they are through addressing those questions. I have not sat down with him recently, and I think that would be something for me to start doing in January.
So you're not a supervisor yet?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so that's good. Of course, one of the important things that you have responsibility for is the budget.
Yes, sir.
And do you have some thoughts along those lines?
I think we need to proceed cautiously. I think we need to be careful when we're spending one-time funds, and we have to look at our recurring expenses and do those exceed our recurring income. There's quite a few things I'm interested into looking into the budget within the county, and transparency is something that I believe we owe the people.
And we sure agree on that.
And I think that's bringing, the support of the people into the budget process, and that way we can build more confidence in our government within Calaveras County.
I see. I understand that we've been using funds that are one-time funds to balance the budget, and there's been different opinions as to whether we're running a deficit or not. And it's for our taxpayers are a little confused about what's really happening with the budget.
Yes, and I think that's where we need some transparency. So you look at the straight numbers and it shows possibly close to a $9 million deficit, but that's not all recurring expenses. Some brief discussions. I don't have the exact numbers on everything going on because I haven't been behind the scenes yet, but I believe it's closer to $2.4 million in deficit spending that's reoccurring.
That's because of reserves that we set aside.
Yes, and the reserves have sustained us, and they'll sustain us through until the next fiscal year. We have to be responsible how we move forward on the next budget and make sure that we start working closer to running a balanced budget so that we are not in a situation where we can't produce, the basic means to do roads that need to be fixed, so on and so forth. The county's behind on a lot of the roads. I understand it's quite significant amount of money that would cost to get the county caught up on roads, so on and so forth. We also have a rapidly filling the dump, Rock Creek. Mm-hmm. And, it's only going to sustain us for so long, and we have to look at what we're going to do in the future with that, because we would like to continue to be able to take Calaveras County's trash to a place and not have it be too costly to the people that live here.
Yeah, one time we used to haul that to Nevada, if I remember correctly, before we had our solid waste facility. It's hard to ask questions about particulars on something like that because you haven't been involved with it. It would be different if you were a supervisor for 4 years, and we can ask some really questions. Hey, what'd you do?
Yes, sir.
But you're so innocent now, you're just starting.
I am green, but we're going to put in a lot of hard work, Al, and that's one of the things I would like to take a close look at. And we're going to have to make sure that we can sustain our landfill for our future generations, not just for the next few years. Yeah,
I understand. It seems like over time, maybe decades, there's been a process whereby more and more monies to pay for infrastructure is coming from the state and the federal government in the form of grants, which have strings attached to them. And in most cases, I think the strings that are attached are agreeable and are not a big problem. But I'm wondering if this process continues far enough, we're going to lose control to the state and the federal government for what we're doing in our county. If we're at if we're at 30% or 50% of our infrastructure now being paid through grants, it wouldn't take too long before that gets close to 100%, unless there's a change of thinking.
Right. We should be self-sustaining. I mean, that's the responsible thing to do. Our taxes are really high. I don't think the right way to go through it is necessarily raise the taxes, but through economic growth and getting people to start spending their money inside the county instead of going outside the county to buy things like clothes, groceries, so on and so forth. If we can build a solid economical, sustainable growth that provides those types of services to the people, we can start keeping our own sales tax within the county and circling it to people that have wages in those jobs. And that type of thing, can provide a healthy growth cycle that puts more money in the coffers without necessarily raising the taxes.
Speaking of taxes, I understand that we passed a TOT tax increase of 100% from 6% to 12%.
12%.
Yeah. Is that free? Is that free money?
No, no money's free out. I pay TOT when I go and I travel to other counties and everything. That's one of those hard ones. Generally, I'm not a person that's for raising taxes in any way, but I do think that can be beneficial to the county. When I personally travel, I don't really look at the TOT tax. I'm going where I'm going. I'm staying at the place I want to.
Right. And
at that point, it's either in my budget or not. The TOT tax going up another 6%, that's going to what? On a $100 room, add $6 more to the bill.
Right.
I don't think that's going to stop people from spending a lot of money inside the county when they're here to visit.
That makes sense, except they'll be spending $6 less with the merchants.
Agreed. But we do need to provide services and fix roads that those people use, so on and so forth, along with us using. And, that's part of sustaining our infrastructure. And that is something we need to take a serious look at, is how are we going to keep our infrastructure up to par?
When this money comes into our budget, there already is money in our budget for fire, roads, and law enforcement. What's to stop some of the money that we're already spending to be spent elsewhere and be replaced by the new money coming in from the TOT tax?
I don't think there's anything to stop it. And also, the way the TOT was written, I do believe that it goes into the general fund, so they can maneuver it to wherever they want without, taking and then replacing. So I personally advocated for them making a specific tax, and going for the super majority with
right.
a 66%. I think they would have pulled that easily if people knew that they knew where it was going.
It probably would have passed.
Right, I think it would have.
Yeah.
But,
I don't agree with it, but I mean.
Right, I agree. I understand where you're coming from, but, our public safety and our firefighters throughout the county, it doesn't matter if I'm down in Rancho Calaveras or we're up on Ebbets Pass with Highway 4, those guys do a lot of work and
right.
and they save a lot of homes, and they've done a great job for us. And we need to provide them with the proper tools to continue that job. And I solidly believe in that. And I think that the TOT tax can be beneficial going towards that. And I'm one person that will be solid on that money going towards those types
right.
of things in the future.
Yeah, there is some interest on spending that money on other things. And I kind of agree that it'd be better if it was really specified, but then again, that requires a supermajority and they're afraid of not getting it passed.
Right.
They thought our taxpayers group was more powerful than we really are.
Well, this one isn't like your normal tax, so I think you would have had a lot more pull out by working against a different type of tax.
Yeah, probably so. And I'm trying to learn how to communicate better, so perhaps given enough time, I could be more useful. Now. One of the things that is important for the supervisors is to negotiate salaries and benefits with employees. Mm-hmm. And this is a really tough job. And from the taxpayer and the public point of view, we know very little about what's going on because it's all done confidentially and done in secret. Mm-hmm. But we do know the results. And one of the one opinion to raise the level of responsibility in the area of salaries and benefits is to have a policy that clearly calls for paying enough money to attract good people. We have good employees in our county. We're blessed with wonderful people. So if we have a policy to have enough money to attract and keep good people, then anything above that is really a gift of public funds, because it's not really necessary to spend that money.
That's the juggle on a living wage. What is a living wage? I think everyone doesn't necessarily have to have a ski boat in their yard, but as long as they can live a healthy lifestyle in the American dream, have their own house and support their own family, I think they have a living wage.
Because that raised another question. That's a good point. What about they do surveys with other counties for similar jobs, government
Salary
jobs.
survey?
Yeah. And one thing they haven't done, at least not yet, is do a salary survey which would include the private sector. This include, like if a bulldozer operator works for a private contractor, and he would make so much money, and then if he works for another government, he would make a different amount of money. And so it seems like if you are attracting people, good people, you would attract them not only from other governments, but also from the private sector. So it makes sense to look at the private sector in comparison for wages. Does that make sense?
Well, to a certain point. A lot of places in the private sector aren't necessarily providing the same benefits that the county does or any other government infrastructure. Some of them don't have the retirement coming in, where if somebody starts with, there's a certain value to that retirement.
Oh, yeah.
So if they're working, for the county, they are provided with CalPERS. And depending on, if it's, I believe it's 2% at 60 some odd years old here in the county. So that's a percent every year on top of a certain salary towards the end of their career.
Okay.
And that can be beneficial, but there are certain issues with CalPERS also. I mean, bad investments in the past. The employee portions are going up, so on and so forth, and it's complicated. So yes, attracting people from the private sector can be a good thing. There's good, hardworking people that are very intelligent that come from the private sector, now and then into the county and other government workforces, and they can be used beneficially. I think that would be a good route to go sometimes too. So there's a juggle on having a higher salary in the private sector and not necessarily quite having that salary, but having better benefits through the county. So that's something that needs to be taken into account.
Oh, yeah, I understand that. One of the concerns with CalPERS is unfunded liability. Mm-hmm. Unfunded liability is an obligation that the county or the employer makes for the future, mm-hmm. and which requires expenditure of today's monies. And some counties, well, I don't know counties, but some jurisdictions has bankrupted them, and I think Stockton had a problem. And then down south there was another one that had a problem, and it seemed like one of the solutions to that is to get away from specifying benefits, instead specify contributions. By specifying contributions, there's a dollar amount that's in the agreement, and it limits liability for the employer. If it's a specified benefit, regardless of what the cost of that benefit is, the taxpayers are required to pay it if it's a specified benefit. Mm-hmm. And I think John Coppell with the taxpayers, the California Taxpayer Association, Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association, really recommends that to try to break that cycle of constantly tending to bankrupt your county. which that segues into how can you deal with employees in a positive way, because you want to keep the good employees and you want to attract good employees, but at the same time you're trusted to guard the taxpayers' money and protect the public. So there was a recent court decision. I think it was Janus decision. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, sir.
What does that do?
That gives the employees, when they come into the county and get a new job in the county, the option to decide whether to join the union or not. At that point, they're provided I believe the same benefits underneath the memorandum of understanding, but that they aren't paying into the group whole where they negotiate with that they use to negotiate said contracts in the future.
I understand there was some jurisdictions that said, okay, you won't join the union, but we're going to take your dues anyway. And I think that's in the courts now. I am unfamiliar with that, but it's a tough juggle, because there's good and bad. I personally work for a union, and there's positive and negative aspects to it. Yeah. Personally, I enjoy the benefits that are provided through the memorandum of understanding with the union. And I understand, and with my experience, those are things that have made it very much easier for me to have a sustainable living wage and be able to bring my family up with the full health care I need. And without those protections, some employers in the past have taken advantage of their employees. And so that's where the tough juggle is. So there is a benefit to having a large entity protecting you, but at the same time, sometimes that large entity makes decisions that not all the employees agree with. Yeah, well, that's true. And sometimes we have to keep a little bit of a sense of humor about this overall thing. So the Janus decision takes away the power of the closed shop for public employees. Public employees no longer can be forced to join a union, and apparently they cannot have the money taken away from them anyway if they don't want to participate.
Right.
And so I understand there was a poll made of public employees, and 80% were not aware of that. Can you believe that? 80% of the public employees were not aware that their membership was voluntary. Okay, now there's a new state law signed by Governor Brown, probably written by the unions, that says that the county government, the employer, cannot communicate with the employees if such communication would hurt or have a negative influence on the unions, which means practically anything that the supervisors would like to say, they couldn't say it directly to employees. I don't know if that would also affect freedom of the press. In other words,
or speech.
Freedom of speech. To me, it seems so un-American, and why you would want to keep public employees in the dark about their rights, and but more importantly, the reasoning behind. Say the Board of Supervisors come up with a plan to retain good employees and to attract good employees, which may, in some cases, mean wage increases. In some cases, it might mean lowering wages that may be too high. And so, in doing that, they would be honoring their obligation to the public and to the taxpayer, but also they would be being very fair with the employees. And if they're not able to communicate this purpose of theirs, if it would be their purpose, it seemed like it'd be almost impossible to have any control over negotiations on wages.
A salary survey
Yeah.
is what you brought up earlier, and this is one avenue to take care of this. The salary survey doesn't always raise wages. It can tell you, look, we're overpaying in this area, so
Right.
in the future maybe we should consider not paying as much for this type of job when we hire someone new.
Right.
It goes both ways, and you what you try to do in those instances is you look at, let's say, surrounding counties that are much like us, and then you go through the jobs that are equal to the jobs that we have here in Calaveras County, and you compare the wages throughout the area of multiple agencies,
Right.
and you see where they're at, and see what, let's say, the median is throughout our area of California, because you would want to basically look in the rural foothills, places maybe like Nevada County,
Yeah.
some parts of El Dorado, Amador for sure, Tuolumne for sure, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Those are where you find comparative wages. The housing costs are close, depending on where you live within those counties, so on and so forth. So that's the type of thing that you would like to look at with a salary survey. And it tells you where Calaveras is sitting with employees. Generally, from my understanding, our county pays a little bit lower on the scale, but I would have to really take a look at the hard numbers to tell you honestly where it's at.
Well, you got to get to work first.
Right.
We're just kind of looking at things as in a philosophical way right now. It's pretty hard to ask you more detail on that because you haven't been a supervisor yet.
No, sir.
One of the things that which has been done is change the retirement process to make it more fair, and even have 401k plans for the employees under their own control, not under the control of the employer or even the union, or for that matter, the state. That, as a taxpayer, that looks like a pretty straightforward, good deal.
It's something to consider.
Yeah.
It'd be definitely something to bring up in negotiations. I mean, I see the union still has quite a few people underneath them, so we'll still be dealing with them in the near future.
Yeah.
And that's where we'll have to look at it. And it's as proceeding with anything. I'm willing to sit down, listen to the facts, and then make a good, solid judgment on the facts that are presented when we go through negotiations like that.
That's almost like a Supreme Court judge.
Well, it's not fair for me to tell you what I want to vote on, because it's
Right.
not about what I want; it's about what the people need.
Right, and what the facts are.
Yes, sir.
Well, Ben, this has been a very, very good session, and we learned a lot. And we appreciate your caringness that you have, and it looks like you're going to be doing some hard work for us. And we want to thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Al. I appreciate you having me here.
I want to thank you for watching Taxpayer Alert. We'll see you next time.